just because you're hitched to somebody else. Your individuality doesn't change. Your uniqueness doesn't change just because you're hitched to somebody else. You are still that person. And so you're coming together for synergism and partnership. But at the same time, if you are still not tending to you and investing in you as an individual, you talk about self-care. If you're not taking care of you, taking yourself out every now and again, doing those things that you enjoy doing while you were alone, every now and again, it's cool to be able to do that.
What you've just heard is a clip from this episode you're listening to. It's from a conversation with our special guest today. I'll introduce her in just a few moments. I wanted to give you a taste of what is to come as we discuss the topic of how to maintain your identity and practice self-care for a happier marriage. So stay tuned as we get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast. This is episode 31, and today you're going to hear an interview with our special guest, licensed marriage and family therapist and international speaker, Georgia Bryce Hutchinson. We will be discussing this topic of how to maintain your identity and practice self-care for a happier marriage. One of the things I've seen in my work as a marriage and family therapist and relationship coach is that sometimes, especially wives, tend to lose their identity. They'll say that to me. I just don't know who I am anymore. They've tried to whether through their husband trying to get them to change, or they have given in, and they've lost who they are. And we're going to talk more about that today. Now, let me say that you may or may not agree with all that you'll hear. And quite frankly, you might be triggered by some of what you'll hear on this episode, because my guest and I kind of did a deep dive in some areas. And so you'll hear, and it may create a tension or a trigger for you. But as you know, that's the purpose of this show. And if you've never listened to the show before, well, you're going to find out that is one of the things that we do here. We stir things up and then take you in for a solid landing. And you can always share your thoughts and comments or send us an email, which you'll hear more about at the end. Now, this show is brought to you by kingsgrant.com. Our hope is that you will be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. Stay tuned.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage World? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage Podcast. Today, we're talking with Georgia Bryce Hutchinson about how to maintain your identity and practice self-care for a happier marriage. Just to remind you that you can also watch a shorter episode of this topic as past ones as well on my YouTube channel at Kingsley Grant. So go to YouTube and just search for Kingsley, Kingssley, Grant, Grant, and you'll see all the videos I have there, this episode, but also some YouTube shorts that give a quicker synopsis of the episode. And make sure you subscribe, like, and click on the notification bell so you won't miss out on any of the video broadcasts. You can also get shorter versions as well, even more so on my TikTok site. And you can also do that by going to Kingsley Grant, and make sure you follow me there as well. Make sure whatever you do to listen to the end of this episode, because I have a special gift for you for simply staying and listening to the end. And the announcer will tell you how to get that special gift at the end of the show. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about our guest and then we'll dive into the interview. Georgia is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and since 2016, she has dedicated herself to helping families and individual members identify and work through underlying factors that fuel problems in their relationships and lives. She helps them improve their skills at effective conflict management and communication and cultivate healthy coping skills. Without any further ado, would you help me welcome to the show Mrs. Georgia Bryce Hutchinson? Welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast show. Today we have our guest, Georgia, who is with us. Georgia, how are you doing today?
Listen, it is Saturday. It is bright and sunny where I'm at, and I'm loving it.
I'm sure people who are in the cold area are going to hate you now for saying what you just said.
I'm so sorry.
I know, hey, well, they can come on down and we have room for more. So that's good. So today we're going to actually talk about couples and in marriages and how people can have a happier marriage. What I find is that almost everyone who enters in marriage space, they have in their mind certain ideas of what should happen, certain expectations. And sometimes those doesn't happen the way they were thinking, right? And so the marriage start changing and things are fading and then becoming unhappy. So I know as a marriage and family therapist, which you are working with so many couples, what have been your experiences in that setting? And what normally does a couple or a spouse who shows up, what's their starting place when they show up to see you as a counselor?
Ooh, loaded question. And you are absolutely right. I think one of the biggest challenges couples do have, the ones I've actually worked with, it's having these ideals that we enter marriage with. There's this expectation, which is understandable because we all come from our own unique culture, our own family culture, where maybe some of us grew up with our parents and we observed the relationship dynamic between our parents. So you kind of come into your own marriage expecting some of these same things, if not everything, to play out the same way. So I think this idea of what marriage is and what it should look like, my expectations concerning my partner, having those preconceived notions and then getting into the situation and realizing that I can't bend my partner to do and to get him or her to do what I want him or her to do. And it's just not evolving or unfolding the way I thought it would have. Right. So I think that's pretty much one of the biggest challenges I find couples coming in with. Couples will come in and they'll give you like a problem list. But when you break it down to the very basics, oftentimes that's most of the time the starting point where I have to go at is where I kind of take some time to help them explore their own life history. Right. So we talk a little bit about what their relationship was like growing up with their parents or parent, and what were some of the observations they made in terms of the relationship dynamic between the parents, because then, or the absence thereof, because that's when you start beginning to connect the dots. And I think a lot of times couples come in not realizing how much their historical context is driving those expectations and those things that are playing out in the current relationship with their partners.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I know I grew up, my dad and my mom was married until my dad died first, and then my mom died many, many years later. And what I saw in that relationship, number one, I made this statement many times. I didn't see what I was hoping to see. I didn't see a marriage where there was a lot of affection and any kind of encouragement or, and what our experience is, right? So that was not the model, unfortunately. And it's not to throw my parents under the bus, but it's not the model that I really wanted to have, because I'm thinking that, wow, I don't see my dad and my mom interacting in a way that was loving. And I see he was very stern, very strong, this Jamaican culture type of thing. And so I came in with this whole male dominance was really the cultural setup, right? So I came in, and the idea is that the man should be the head of the home, and he should, that's the expectations, right? Now, there, of course, thank God that has been changed, but that is where I find some couples, like you described earlier, they come in with this preconceived ideas of what it should look like, the roles that should be played. And now they're like, surprise, it's not the way. And now it's almost like, wait a minute, I guess you don't care, you don't love. And all these different kind of scripts is now being thrown into the mix, and they're having this problem. So they come in with this list, and now they're having this expectation shattered. disappointment hurts and pain and so on. How do you then, where do you begin to help them to realize what might be most helpful to start to change the experiences they're having?
Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned just now, this idea of helping them kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into their own historical context. And as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking about one of my most recent couple that I dealt with. They're both young. They've been married for a couple of years. And interesting mix, the one of the dyad, one of the individuals in the dyad, grew up in a home grew up with both parents. However, it was the same kind of dynamic. There wasn't that emotional affection that was readily present. There was that disconnect. Mom was always busy working. Dad was just kind of hands off. And so there wasn't a lot of exchange wasn't occurring in the relationship. So knowing that you're loved, because of course, as long as I'm feeding you and I'm taking care of you, I'm putting clothes on your back and you have a roof on your head, then you are loved.
Of course.
In terms of conversations, in terms of intimacy, all of that stuff was absent. So that was one issue that played out on that person's end. So when this individual got into the marriage, didn't know how to show up. And of course, the other partner is having expectations of these things and they're not playing up. The other partner, on the other hand, grew up in a single parent home, right? Mm-hmm. And so the only kind of, when even within the context of conflict management, the only kind of relationship exchange is between an adult and a child. And so that authoritative presence was always playing out. That dominance was always there. So of course, this individual shows up in marriage, and that's exactly what this person was doing with regards to the partner. And so there was that constant gridlock over issues that were very, very simple that they were not able to communicate. There was very limited conflict management because, again, the historical context, it was just consistently driving how each person was showing up. Some of it they were aware of, some of it they came to understand when we started doing that deep dive into the life stories or their life histories. Mm-hmm. And so I think as they began making those connections, connecting the dots, it's almost like a eureka moment occurred for both of them. And they're like, oh my God, this is why I'm showing up the way I'm showing up, or this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And once each person started recognizing that it is my historical context that's having significant influence on how I'm showing up in this space, I can now get to choose, how do I really want to show up? Mm-hmm. I can get to reframe how I want my marriage to be. And so the awareness came in, and now we are starting to work on, what is your ideal? What is the kind of culture that you want for your marriage, separate and distinct from what you're coming out of? So I think once the awareness is present, because of course, Mr. Kingsley, you and I know, if you don't even know that stuff is at work, you don't even know what to do. Right. Sure. So we spend time kind of unlocking those kinds of dynamics, and people become aware of them. And then they get to choose, okay, this is not working for me. These are some things I've adopted from where I'm coming from. It's not fitting into this environment that I'm in. So what is it that I need from my partner? What does my partner need from me? And how can we show up together, creating something new and something different? So that's one aspect that I do work on. One of the other things that I do as well is I typically reserve this for my individual therapy sessions, but I'm realizing I got to bring it into couples. I have to talk a lot about core beliefs, those deep beliefs that drive us, that we hold about ourselves. And these are often, we have good and negative. Yes. But the negative core beliefs, as you know, put a significant cap on how far we can go. And if I don't feel good about myself, then obviously that's going to show up in the relationship, right? And then cognitive distortions, which I like to call them, that's the elephant sitting in the room. And oftentimes one of those primary things that's creating gridlock in relationships, and we don't know that they're there. Because poll any of your clients, you'll ask them, have you ever heard the concept of cognitive distortions? And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. So by way of explaining that briefly for your audience, it's a distorted way of thinking. It's things that we perceive to be there, when in truth and in fact, they're not. So I'll give you a perfect example. It's overgeneralizing. So one thing happens with one person, and so we just kind of lump sum that this is always going to play out, or because this incident occurred in this setting, I'm always going to be subjected to this thing playing out constantly. Jump into conclusion. We don't assess the facts, but we jump to conclusion. Why? Because we had an experience before and we automatically think that this is the next thing that's going to play out. And so we already gear up ourselves to deal with those issues. And in truth and in fact, it's not the situation that's playing out. So I think when my clients become aware of these nuances that are at work, again, it's almost like a light bulb goes off and then they get to then decide, how do I want to respond in these situations when they show up? Is this really what's happening here? Or is it something completely different?
Mm-hmm. So, which I think is very cool. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think what it is now that you kind of help them to unpack and identify some of these things, which tells me then they have to then change basically now how they communicate, right? How do they get right? So this is a big, most of my clients when they show up, most times, they'll say 90% of the time, they'll say, we just don't communicate. We just don't communicate. Our communication is horrible. And that's, they start there as an entry point, but then of course, there's other issues that's parallel onto that. But here's my question to you, Georgia, is how important then is them to change their communication style? And, or how do they do that? Or how important is that, especially after they've identified some of these core underlying beliefs and so on?
Yeah. I think ultimately the idea of identifying those things is then going to enable you to be able to change your communication style. No, it's kind of tricky when you talk about communication styles, because there are different kinds, different ways in which people communicate. That's subjective. I am an extrovert, for example, and a lot of times you find in partnerships where one is more extroverted and really need to talk about issues right now, really need to get this thing solved, and the other person is more on the, well, give me some time, I gotta think about this before I say anything. There's nothing wrong with either approach, right? I think the most important thing is, number one, recognizing that there is a difference in how people communicate, and there's a difference in the ways in which people seek to resolve conflict or manage conflict. And there's no right or wrong to it. I think, however, when we talk about those things that I referenced earlier, the idea of the cognitive distortions that could be at work, or those historical things that are surfacing and influencing how I'm showing up in a relationship, if they're able to identify those pieces and how it could be taking away from communication, or how it could be creating gridlock. Because of course, you think about a lot of times when people talk about we don't communicate well, or there's a lot of conflict in a relationship, it really comes down to people not being able to manage the anxiety that's associated with the moment, right? And so if I'm the person who I love to just resolve issues right away, and nothing is wrong with that, and my partner is the one who says I need time to really process and think about it, it's managing the anxiety. It's managing the anxiety piece. So if I can manage my anxiety about feeling the need to fix this thing right now, and being patient enough to wait until my partner comes on board to say, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation, then that's a win. And of course, just because the other person who likes to lay off, it's also anxiety that that person is seeking to manage, in your way of trying to avoid conflict, but we already know avoidance of conflict just creates more conflict. So both people are managing anxiety in different ways. Both people are communicating in different ways. But if we're able to help individuals identify those nuances that makes it difficult to communicate clearly, even though our communication styles might be different, or to manage conflict effectively, even though our approach to conflict management might be different, if we're able to help them identify those other things that are making it hard, and then help them put measures in place to address those issues, then communication is not a problem.
Yeah. I really like what you
like communication in and of itself is not the problem.
Right. It's like, I think it's just one of the things that how it shows up, right? And then it shows up in the way that, we don't, our interactions become very, maybe hostile or whatever that comes as a result of that. And many times, as you describe so well, those differences shows up. And so what I find sometimes in those differences and not realizing that we're just different in our styles and being okay with that, or anxiety is driving parts of that.
Yes.
I find the couples then creates, other additional problems, because now they the anxiety drives certain behaviors, right? And it creates some conflict areas. So I call it disruptive interactions, because they didn't understand, they didn't know this, it disrupts the whole dynamic of the relationship. So when they are in that, I call it disruptive cycle, because of not knowing certain things, not being able to be okay with the differences. How do they then change that? And what might be some steps or some things that will be helpful for a couple or a person listening right now who is in that chaos, that mayhem, because they have really not understood the difference or be okay with that. And these behaviors that have come out as a result of that have caused pain and hurt and all those different things. What would they need to do from this point to try and change all of that to set up for possibly a more healthy and a happier relationship?
I think it's important to first of all understand that it's not so a lot of the conflict or a lot of the gridlock comes because we're feeling that our partner is after us. Either they're coming after us or they're trying to marginalize us, or a number of different things. It's him or her against me. One thing they taught us in therapy when I was in school is that the problem is the problem. Your partner is not the problem.
Right.
And so I think and I could say it because when I also think about my own personal life, because, people seem to think therapists don't have issues. We got issues too.
Let's spend a day together and I can
That's a whole
bring you to my
other story.
world.
Okay. But I do realize that when I'm working with couples and when I'm able to help them come to a state or a space where they realize that what their partner is doing, it really most of the time isn't about them. It's about the partner. It's about the individual's own intrapersonal struggles, whether it's their own cognitive distortions that they're dealing with, or their own negative core beliefs about themselves, or their own historical context and trauma and experiences that they're battling, and they're reacting to it. When we're able to help them come to that point of understanding, it helps to alleviate some of the pressure. Because now I'm beginning to realize that, my partner is not really coming after me. They're reacting to me, but what's going on has very little to do with me. It's something that's going on with the individual themselves. And so that kind of eases a lot of the tension out of the room so that now we can actually sit and perhaps even become more empathic towards the other person. Because now I'm seeing it's not that the person is coming after me. They're just reacting because 9 times out of 10, they don't even realize that they're struggling. The stuff that they're struggling is with themselves. It's something that's going on with themselves. And so it's easier when that's cleared to have people sit together and have conversations. And people then become curious, like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this about you. I didn't understand that you were going through this and that's what it meant to you. All along, I was here taking it personal, that it was an assault or an affront against myself, when in truth and in fact, it had nothing to do with me. So getting them to that place where there is a sense of relief, if you want to put it that way, then we can have real dialogue and then determine what do we want to do next in terms of the relationship.
I love that. I love the way that you framed that, because I think it just leads right into my next part, because I think that, yes, that this empathy and this understanding and realizing that your spouse, your partner, your husband, your wife is the one who is really probably dealing with some issues on his or her own world, in her own, space. So that recognition and that empathy lens that is now being brought into the conversation here will allow the person possibly then to see that, like you just said, that what happened and what he or she may have done may not necessarily be against them or towards them, right? It's their own issues. So I find, though, a lot of painful moments may have occurred unnecessarily, or misunderstandings have taken place, have led to pain, and as a result of that. So a person listening right now who find themselves is now saying, oh man, maybe yes, my husband, maybe my wife is really, I see the struggle sometimes, the stress they're under, and I see it's those times that they are behaving this way. So there's hurt. How does a person then take that and decide, well, we need to move past this or move to a healthier place, but there's hurt, there's pain, there's still something that have happened? What might be the next thing they need to do then to begin to start healing, or even to push this relationship to what I call a happier state?
I think what came to my mind just now probably might not sound too kosher. Because like you said, there is hurt. I am hurt and I'm angry. Yeah. But truth be told, I think the one thing that I know, there are probably other approaches that people could take, but the one thing that I do know is often very effective is being able to put your feelings aside and probably ask your partner, how can I help you? Like, because I'm realizing when you're under stress, things begin to spiral and I get sucked into whatever it is. So yeah, I'm dealing with hurt right now, but I want to know, how can I help you when you're in this space and things begin to spiral and then it begins to affect the relationship itself? And that person is then able to give you some clue, maybe some insight, or maybe it's an opportunity to have a conversation because maybe the person doesn't really know because they never thought about it.
Yes.
Right. And so we think of emotional safety. That's one of the things I help my clients to kind of identify within the context of their relationship. What does emotional safety look like? And I've always said to clients, don't make assumptions for your partner. Your partner is the one who is able to tell you specifically, for me to feel emotionally safe in this relationship where I could be my most vulnerable self, I need these things from you. So let's have that conversation about what emotional safety looks like, and what is it you need from me to help put you in that space, so that rather than we're us going after each other in when something comes up, we're able to actually sit and lean in with curiosity, as we talk about all the time, or exercise that empathy that's needed. Because if those aspects or those components are missing, you're always going to end up in gridlock. You're always going to end up, like I always say, the conflict is sitting at the side watching what's going on while we're tearing each other apart.
I really like what you said. And I think, I agree 100% that the idea of putting aside your emotions and setting that aside for now, because if you're going to change what's in play, you got to do some things different, because what got you here would not get you there, right?
Exactly.
So the things that you are doing that have gotten to where you are, if you keep on doing them, you're going to get the same results. And you're surprised. Exactly. Nothing is changing. Nothing will change unless you change some things, right? Nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I find where people sometimes, and I love how you framed that, was the empathy and the curiosity, right? To lean into the other person and realize, maybe I need to be more other-centered here. Let me just kind of see what my partner needs. How can I come alongside? How can I help? And surprisingly, that may be all it took to transform that relationship. That's one question where the person felt like, finally, I'm not invisible. You've seen me, you've heard me, you've acknowledged me, and I heard too, right? That's how they kind of hear it and receive it. And so they're now able to lean towards you, and possibly the reciprocity occurs, right? So where does forgiveness fit into all of this? Or if at all, would this be the time for the healing to take place? And what would that look like? The offering of it, the receiving of it, and so on.
Well, forgiveness, we know from a Judeo-Christian standpoint that's something that's always advocated. Forgiveness is like the motor oil in your engine. If that's missing, you're going to have a lot of friction, and it's going to be very hard. And it's going to be very hard for you, right? Now, I will say that forgiveness and the process of healing is still subjective. Because how dare I say to somebody, you need to just get over it. You need to that's not how it works. Just like the grieving process, people grieve in their own ways. People recover in their own ways. They recover at their own speed, at their own time. What I think is most important is that you're working towards that. You're moving towards that. So is forgiveness crucial? It is. How it plays out now is going to be a different story. For some people, it may take some people could just get over things real quickly. And for other people, it will take some time. I think what's one of the worst things a partner could do is to say to the other who's been offended, you need to forgive me, or you need to get over it. You're already sinking the ship right there. Okay. Give that person time. And forgiveness may also involve people. They may have to ask you questions over and over again, because that's a part of their healing process. They may have highs and lows. Today, they're very happy with you. Everything is cool. Tomorrow, they get into a zone, especially when it comes on to if infidelity is a part of the issue that they're dealing with. These things take time. If hurt has been piled on top of hurt, if there has been a series of hurts that have occurred, people will not just heal immediately. Trust has to be regained. Emotional safety has to be restored. All of those things are going to be crucial. And so people will need to exercise patience in that regard.
Mm-hmm. This is where I find some people are unwilling to do that because of how long it's going to take. I hear that question sometimes. So how long is it going to take? I said, well, if I had an answer to tell you it's going to take this long, trust me, you would not, you couldn't afford me. Okay.
If we had a formula, okay.
Yeah. So say that, for example, that this has happened where the couple have recognized the shortcomings, recognize the differences, now begin to say, you know what, we could make this happen. We now recognize some things, and we need to now put some new measures in place, new techniques, new habits in place. Because if we want to have a different relationship, like I said before, we're going to have to make some adjustment and change our communication, our interaction, how we empathize and how we, curiosity questions and so on. What are some things that they may now begin to do as habit building that can help them to begin to solidify this new path that they're now creating? Because say that the healing is taking place, they want to do some things different. So I believe habits are very essential, or some healthy habits. What are some habits that they may want to, you may encourage them to do to begin to change and keep that momentum going in the right direction?
Yeah. So, we help clients to explore what is important to them. We help couples to explore what matters to them. So, for example, if there are some things that they believe, would make a difference in the relationship, or some things that they weren't doing before that they probably perhaps always wanted to do, but never had an opportunity to pursue. Let's start from scratch. Let's start as though you have a second chance with this marriage, with this relationship. What is it that is in your heart? Or what are some of the things that you've always aspired to, or always had a desire for, that you were never able to manifest in the relationship before? Let's put some of those things in play. And it could be very basic stuff. If people didn't really spend time, I know there's a couple that I worked with, had children very early in the game, didn't have much support. So of course, a lot of their time was spent raising children.
Yes.
So didn't have time for the relationship. And of course, that came with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of bumps and bruises. But now they're having a second chance to rebuild the relationship. So what are they doing? They're doing a lot of dating.
That's good. Yeah.
Get the kids over to grandma, and they're spending more time. They're very intentional with each week. They're going out. They have some place set aside that they want to go dine, that they enjoy, things that they like to do. They're intentional with setting aside that time to do dating, because dating was not something that they had a chance to do before. And in that process, they're getting to know each other, not as the person they knew many years ago, but as the person that they are now. Mm-hmm. You create your own traditions, and that's pretty subjective. Different couples do different things that makes their marriage work. If appreciation was not a part of the relationship before, perhaps being more expressive with appreciation, probably being more touchy-feely, probably sitting down together more. It's your marriage. Whatever you do it.
Yeah.
So be intentional with it.
One thing I really would like, I want to mention here, because you mentioned, I saw you did a post one time, and I thought that was so cool, because some people, when they're married, they just can lose that individual aspect of self-care, right? And they don't necessarily see it. They want to always be that person, and how important is it for a spouse to truly develop or continue to grow and develop themselves as an individual, even though they're married?
Listen, sir, you are going up into my business right here. I 100% believe in autonomy. I am so serious. And I don't know, maybe because I got married at an older age, quote unquote, if you want to put it that way. I had a lot of years being by myself, right? So I had a lot of time to spend on Georgia, focusing on my purpose, focusing on my pursuits, my vision, building my businesses, the things that I wanted to do. I was very much into that. In fact, when I decided to get married to my husband, he'll tell you that one of the things that we talked about a lot was, how did he see himself fitting into my space with what I do? Because, granted, when you get married, things are going to change.
Of course.
But the essence of who you are does not. Your purpose does not change. Your vision and the mission on your life doesn't change. And so I'm grateful for me that I still get to flow in those spaces. I still get to pursue business as I do. I still get to do the things that are meaningful to me as an individual. The marriage is there. The togetherness is there.
Of course.
Purpose as it relates to your marriage is there. That's something new that you're building. But unless you're bringing you, the individual, in, and that person is still being maintained. Dr. Miles Monroe said it best. Just because you're married doesn't mean you stop being single. Single means being whole, separate, unique, and individual. Your separateness doesn't change just because you're hitched to somebody else. Your individuality doesn't change. Your uniqueness doesn't change just because you're hitched to somebody else. You are still that person. And so you're coming together for synergism and partnership. But at the same time, if you are still not tending to you and investing in you as an individual, you talk about self-care. If you're not taking care of you, taking yourself out every now and again, doing those things that you enjoy doing while you were alone, every now and again, it's cool to be able to do that. I took myself out to a date one night by myself. My husband wasn't here, so that's why I could do it. But even when he's here, I'll probably go to the movies. I'll probably go do something, because you still have to maintain you as a person. The more you maintain you, guess what? The more you're able to maintain the marriage.
100%.
If you're all about your marriage, you're doomed.
You know what? I tell a couple of many times, when you do that, you're energizing. You're going to take that energy back to the relationship. So the relationship is going to benefit when you're able to continue to flourish as a person. So really, you're doing it on behalf of the relationship. But when you don't, you are then not helping. Like you just said, the relationship is going to be doomed because you lose your identity. You don't even know who you are, and you just even know how. What's your purpose? What am I even here for?
And it happens so often, sir. It happens a lot, and I would say women are very much guilty of this more than men. I've observed that long before I became a therapist, and I see it even more so now. And the challenge that brings is that when you begin to start hitting those snags in a relationship, if your identity is exclusively tied to your marriage, you're going to be in problem when conflict starts in the relationship.
100%. I'm glad you mentioned that part and you brought that up, because I do see it myself too, but I think it's better for you coming from you to have you say that, because it is received better that way. Georgia, I'm telling you, there's so many grounds we've covered today, and I really appreciate the time you're taking, because it's a busy time. You're busy, but also some time that you're on an R&R is the end of the year kind of thing here. So I really appreciate that. But I think you brought such value to that person who's listening. Just so articulate in sharing this kind of frameworks and different ideas people can do to truly help them. I think that was so important. But I could not wrap this up without asking you, if people want to hear more about you, see what you're doing, how connect with you, tell them how to do that, and what would they get from you if they seek out your help or your business, your speaking, and so on. Tell us a little bit how to connect with you and what it's all about.
Sure. So besides from my love for therapy, I do have my private practice, Building Families According to Pattern, where I provide therapy for couples and individuals as well as whole families. I do work with whole families, believe it or not. I can be found on Psychology Today. If you go on Psychology Today and pull me up, you'll find me there. I think one of the easiest ways to access me at this point, I am working on my website. I'm updating my website, as a matter of fact. So one of the easiest platforms to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. There's a newsletter that I actually put out I try to put it out every 2 weeks. That's focused on mental health and just kind of bringing some of the conversations I have in the therapy room into the mainstream, because we know, sir, that there's still that stigma attached to mental health, and we want to break that down. So that's my way of helping to make the conversation about mental health and relationship health as normalized as possible. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Georgia Bryce. You can find me on Facebook, Building Families According to Pattern, very active on that platform as well. And then, of course, again, if you're looking for services in terms of couples therapy or family therapy, I can be reached at Psychology Today. I make therapy fun. I'm not your typical therapist. I really am not. My background is engineering. So listen, I didn't come up the ranks through the psychology and humanities ranks. I came up through science and engineering. And as much as I'm a therapist, my bent is still very much an engineer. So it's different. It's different, but it's unique. But I find that what I bring to the table, it works. It works well with clients. So definitely doing therapy with me is fun. My clients, I believe in empowering people. It's the idea of I don't teach you I don't give you a fish. I teach you how to fish so that when you run into other issues, you have a set of skills that you cultivated in therapy that you're able to reach for without, unless all hell is popping loose, you probably won't need to come see me again for a while. So those are some great platforms. LinkedIn and on Facebook are great platforms if you needed to reach me.
And Bryce is with a Y.
Yes, BRYCE.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
yeah, so we'll have the links that follows the show in show notes, so a person can link that, connect that with Georgia, because you will be, like you've seen and heard, the energy, what you see, what you get, and I really appreciate that about her and her fun approach. And it's so funny because you mentioned that I didn't come up the ranks myself. I was in computer science, so I have the science.
I didn't know that, sir.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my undergrad is is computer science. So that whole I take that whole thing into this whole realm, and it makes a difference. I see the result is different because I think differently than most who come up ranks, and that same thing you just mentioned, which is what you do as well. So. Georgia, thank you so very much.
This is why we get along so well, sir.
See, we had the underlying science kind of makeup, and that's why we just put the mental health therapy thing on top of that.
Absolutely.
And I do appreciate that. And so from the Happier Marriage community, thank you for being here. And we'll make certain that we have our links available and people will reach out to you that way. And so thank you so very much. And there you have it, my friends. I hope you got a lot from this episode. Make sure you follow Georgia and share this episode with others. As promised, the announcer will tell you how to get your copy of a free ebook that I have just for you because you stayed and listened to the end, and she'll tell you how to get that. But before she comes, let me invite you to check out our new website at happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com, where you will find all the podcasts in one place as well as our blog post. So thanks again for listening. And now here's the announcer.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1. Make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2. Subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3. Get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.